Hello and welcome to part one of the three-part Pendulum Dowsing Masterclass. I'm so delighted that you have joined me because I'm so enthusiastic about dowsing and bringing it to a wider audience. It's an incredibly powerful tool for personal development as well as a practical tool. So I think we all benefit from learning how to dowse. And for me, it's been a tremendous source of guidance and a way of tapping into my inner knowing throughout my life. So before we start, I really want to tell you a little bit about who I am so that you know who is helping you develop your dowsing skills. So I'm Faye. I'm really a spiritual life and business coach, and dowsing is one of the tools that I use. So I worked for many years as a project manager for the British government, for the charity sector and the private sector. And at the same time, I was working as a dowser and a geomancer, so someone who heals land. And I got into working with agricultural and horticultural properties. The reason I got into that was because when I was a child, my family returned to our ancestral lands of Ireland, and we lived in the middle of nowhere. And we had to walk half a mile every morning and back to get water in buckets from the nearest spring. And that was hard going when you had animals. And I was only 9, my brother was only 11, my mum had moved over on her own. It was tough. We had no running water in the house for a while. We lived in a proper crofter's cottage. So we, in the view to developing the property, we needed a new source of water. We had a rainwater tank, but it just wasn't always clean. It wasn't always holding enough water. So someone suggested we get a dowser in to locate the site for a borehole. And there was quite a lot of us kids turned up on that day because we were excited to see what this strange thing was going to be. And this old chap turned up, typical, white sleeves rolled up, cloth cap, and proceeded to walk up and down our 2.5-acre plot with a bent hazel wire rod that he had just cut out of the hedge. And he said to us kids, he says, do you want to have a go at this and see if you can find water? Some of the other kids had a go and it didn't work for them. And I was really reticent. I was a really shy child. I was really reticent about standing up and doing this. And I picked the hazel rods and I walked over the ground, and in the end they bent that sharply and that suddenly they actually snapped in my hands, and it was the most incredible experience. And Paddy, as it was, took me on as a water diviner at that time at the age of 9. So I traversed the countryside with him in his old van going water divining. We actually spent a lot of time in Irish pubs as well, so I was a very good pool player as a child. But the thing that I never really told him at that time was that I could see earth energy. I can see the energy of water in the ground. I can see landscape energy. I can see energy everywhere. In fact, the earth and everything, the air and people have this technicolor energy spectrum around them, these kaleidoscopic patterns that are constantly intermingling and talking to each other. And it wasn't something I shared with people until I was quite a bit older. But that's how I got into dowsing, and that's why my professional career as a project manager was never enough. And this is why I ended up being a dowser and geomancer. And it was at a certain point in time then when my own life sort of took a 360 turn, when I had to flee an abusive marriage, that I decided life was too short. And I decided that I was going to take my dowsing and geomancy and my project management skills and create an online business to support myself and my children. That's what I've done. And I used dowsing as a part of the decision-making process along that way. So I knew that the actions I was taking were in my best interest and were therefore more likely to bring me the successful outcomes that I was looking for. So that's a little really quick potted history of me. As I say, I'm probably one of the most fascinating and interesting people you will ever meet. I'm also, very self-depreciating and have quite a quirky sense of humour. So what I would say is, over the course of this series of masterclass, schedule time into your day when the videos are going to drop. So you've got one, then you've got a day to practice, there's another video, day to practice, another video, day to practice, and then there's a final wrap-up video. We've talked about the next steps you need to take. So give yourself the gift of time. Download the workbook if you've not already, that will look something along these lines. And it has sessions within that you're going to complete each day. And it's got a rundown of the schedule. It's got details of the competitions, the bonus sessions coming up, and all those kind of things. So work through. So each video session builds upon the one before. So you're going to want to watch them in order so you can work through the exercises in a progressive way. And in the days between the videos, there will be workbook prompts to help you complete the workbook if you can't quite work out what all the boxes are for. So they'll be in there. I'll be popping in and out the group as well to see how people are getting on. And there is a bonus live Q&A coming up in the Facebook group and another bonus session in a few days' time. So you know, the Facebook group, it will support the video learning that you're going to have. So do engage with that. So that's really all I wanted to say to start with. So let's get on with the dowsing training. So many people are drawn to dowsing. It almost in essence seems a bit magical that you're holding a dowsing tool and, you know, somehow this information is coming through to us. So dowsing is actually really simple. It is not magic. It's an ability that we all have, and it's a way of us accessing information that we have no other way of knowing. And it's incredibly powerful because dowsing, when we get it right, is incredibly accurate. So what actually is dowsing? Well, dowsing is, as I say, it's a means by which we want to get information, and it basically has. It's a way of asking questions that only have a yes or a no answer. So there's no, what does that mean? I wonder if I ought to do that. Is that the right step? There's none of that. It's yes or no. That simple. It doesn't get any more complicated than that. So how do we use dowsing? In essence, we use dowsing in, it has 3 elements to it. So this is the first boxes in your workbook. We are searching, so we're looking for something, and that might be we're looking for underground water pipes or sources of water. We might be looking for earth energy, or we might be looking for gold, ores, minerals. We might be looking for lost people. We might be looking for lost pets, but we are searching for something. We are looking for something. We can also be searching for information, but we're searching for something. That's the first element to it. The second element to it is we're identifying something. So we found, you know, something in our landscape, some form of earth energy. We're identifying what it actually is. We've found the water course coming into our property. Now we're identifying the most appropriate place to sink the borehole if we want a water supply. So we're searching for something, and then we're honing in and we're identifying the part or the thing or the something in more detail that we're actually looking for. And the third part of dowsing is that we're making assessments. So we're looking, as I say, we've found, you know, an EMF field. We've identified, for instance, that it's possibly a potential source for ill health, the person who lives in that home. And then we're assessing to what degree is that electromagnetic field a problem for that person. So we're then making assessments. So we're gathering this information, we're identifying what we need to know, and then we're assessing the quality of that information. So it is an incredibly powerful tool, and this is why I really love it. So, and there are 2 main methods in which we use dowsing. So that's sort of the elements of dowsing. We're searching, identifying, and assessing information. But the 2 main methods that we use dowsing are what are called field dowsing and remote dowsing. Now, field dowsing is when we're actually on site. So I might be walking over some farm fields to find a source of water. I might be walking over some farm fields to find out where the best form of earth energy coming in that's going to support the crop growth, but also the financial health of that enterprise. I might be dowsing someone's home to find out what sources of energy in the home, the energy anatomy of the home, how it's not supporting its occupants in terms of their health and wealth. So that's field dowsing, which we're physically present, we're on site. We are there in all our physical glory doing the dowsing. Now, the second way that we use dowsing is remote dowsing. Now, that includes things like map dowsing. So I don't actually go to the farm because it might be in another country, halfway around the world, and then I get a map out and I look at the small holding. I've got Google Earth, I've got maps, I've got photographs, and I do the dowsing from that. That's map dowsing. And then the other one is information dowsing, where we're actually looking for information. So that is really then that we're looking for, we could be asking questions. We could be asking questions about a client's health. You know, they're not in the room with us, but they might even be in the room with us, but we need this sort of remote information. We need to find out, are they deficient any vitamins and minerals? We need to find out how long that break in their leg is going to take to fully recover. We're finding information. We need to know, you know, I might need to know how to what the soil needs in a farm environment to support crop growth. You know, that we're finding definite pieces of information that are going to inform our actions, because dowsing in itself is a tool, it's a means to an end. It's a means of finding out what we need to do so that we can take the right action to get the outcomes that we're looking for, rather than taking our best guess and hoping that it all works out. Because I don't know about you, but I have made some goddamn awful mistakes doing that. And this is why I like dowsing, because it enables me to take actions, and it's that are going to give me the outcome that I want. And this is what I've been teaching thousands of people for many, many years to do, is to use dowsing in this way as an incredibly powerful tool for personal and spiritual development. And that includes looking after our health and well-being, for instance. So we use dowsing to gather information. And so this way, dowsing forms a bridge between our intellect and our intuition. So when we dowse, and I'll just talk about this briefly, when we dowse, we ask a question. So it can be, is it in my best interest to apply for a new job in the whatever sector that you're working? So that gives you an inkling that it might be time to change your career, might be time to do something else. And then you would ask questions about the timescale, where to apply, you know, all those kind of things. We break the question down. Every time we ask a dowsing question, we send out from our energy field a wave of information that goes across the universe. And what quantum physics now tell us is that an answer comes back as a corresponding wave of information, which we absorb. But this information comes in as energy. Now, that's no use to man nor beast if we don't know how to interpret that energy in the right way. And this is what dowsing does. So energy is great, isn't it? Oh, I've got this feeling, but now I don't know quite what to do. So dowsing is a way of taking this energy and transforming that information, because it's energy that has yet to come into form. It's our way of taking that energy and putting it into form, some useful form, so that we can take action on it. Because hunches, sensations, insights, synchronicity, angel numbers are all very great, aren't they? But they're all really a bit vague. They rely on our individual interpretation of them. And sometimes, you know, with the best will in the world, we don't get that right. So why not remove the margin for error and, you know, ask a sensible question that only has a yes or no answer? And this is what dowsing does. So what I want to say, you know, is that to get started with dowsing, you need to understand that dowsing, it doesn't matter what your pendulum is made of. You could use a pretty crystal like this, or you could run out to your garage or find a nut and bolt in your kitchen drawer, and you could use a nut on a piece of cotton like that. The dowsing implement is just the tool. You are the real receiver of the information. You are the transmitter of the question, the receiver of the information. You are in the driving seat. Dowsing is not holding a pendulum and it's starting to rotate and you go, oh, what's it doing? It's clearing my energy field. It's something. That's just you holding a pendulum. That is not dowsing. That the movement is just responding to every little minor thought that is going through your head. Every time you think, your energy field moves, the pendulum moves. It's that simple. So what we want to do to start with is we need to understand what our dowsing responses are. So this is the first thing we need to establish. You need to establish your yes and your no response. So to start with, you want to just really find a pendulum that's comfortable for you. It can be a pretty crystal. This one's quite big. It can be a smaller one. It can be a nut on a piece of cotton. It can be a bead. What it wants to be is a fairly equilateral object, so it's fairly equal all the way around. And you want to have it on a length of string that's just comfortable for you. Some people prefer a longer string. Some people prefer a shorter chain. Just play about with it to see what is comfortable for you. You want to hold the string over your thumb and finger so that the pendulum can move about freely without catching anything. It needs to oscillate freely, swing round in a bloody big circle, basically. So that's what your pendulum needs to do. So try out different pendulums. It's personal preference. You don't have to have a brass one with a witness statement. It doesn't have to be put out in a full moon. You don't have to chant round it or sacrifice a chicken to clear its energy. You don't need to do any of that stuff. It's kind of superstition that's built up around dowsing that actually doesn't help it, and it doesn't help you. A pendulum is just a pendulum. You know, people say, how do you cleanse my pendulum? Me, I drop this one in fairy liquid. And the good things about these, when you're dowsing out in the field, if you actually drop it, like I have done out the back of a tractor, or you've left it on the side of the field, there's no huge emotional attachment. You haven't sort of lost anything precious to you. Whereas I wouldn't want to lose a pendulum that's actually has lost its tip, you will see, because mine get a bit of a bashing, but I wouldn't want to lose something that's meaningful to me. So when play about with your pendulum, find a weight and a cord that you're comfortable with. Now, when we're dowsing, we actually want to keep these shoulders, our shoulders relaxed. We want to relax all the deltoid muscles over here, because when we move the pendulum, what happens is we receive the information as energy. That is received by our subconscious mind. Our subconscious mind gets the essence of that information, but our subconscious mind doesn't use language. So it needs to pass that information to our conscious mind in a way that our conscious mind can interpret it through language. So what we do is we set our pendulum into a predetermined movement, meaning it moves one way for meaning yes, and it moves another way to mean no. And that way, our subconscious mind, which has control of our body, can send tiny little impulses down our arm, which our conscious mind isn't in control of, to move the pendulum in this predetermined movement that means yes or no, so that our conscious mind, which is quite limited, can look at it and go, ah, now I understand. Because before this, I was going around in circles and getting myself all tangled up in knots. So that's why we need to establish a yes or no response. So that's all we're going to do today. Is actually your homework today is to establish your yes and your no response. So how do we do that? You get your pendulum, a weight that you are comfortable with. You play around with the length of cord. You know, I actually prefer mine quite short. I'm recording to camera, so my hand is quite high. Ideally, you want this muscle relaxed, and you want your lower forearm almost at 90 degrees to your lap. So your arm should be fairly level. You don't want to be holding your arm up like this and in like this, because you're then tensing all these deltoid muscles. So you want to douse with your arm where you now can't see it. So the pendulum is almost dangling over your knees. So excuse me while I hold my arm up here, but when you're practicing, I want you to keep this arm nice and relaxed. That's what you want to do. So to start your yes and your no response, don't start with the pendulum stock still staring at it like you expect it to do magic. Swing it backwards and forwards away from you. That's what we call the neutral position. That's like putting your car into neutral. You haven't put it into gear yet, but you're getting ready to go somewhere. So swing the pendulum backwards and forwards. Get a bit of motion in it. You're in the driving seat. It's not going to fly off. It's not going to do anything. And then you've got two ways of establishing your yes and no answer. Now, one of the easiest ways is to actually ask a question that you know the answer is yes and that you know the answer is no, and note which way your pendulum moves. So I can ask a really simple question like, is my name Faye? And my pendulum moves in an anti-clockwise motion for yes. So is my name Faye? I've got quite a strong movement, by the way. I've been dowsing since I was 9. Don't expect your pendulum to move quite so rapidly or quite so forcefully. You know, you might just get a slight movement, and it will take time and practice. So keep practicing questions. You know, the answer is yes. I can say, is this my desk? Is that a window with the sun shining through it? So I'll ask again, is that a window with the sun shining through it? Is that my office door? Right, because I know all these answers. I know they're yes. It doesn't matter at the moment that you know the answer is yes. What you're trying to do is establish what your yes and your no responses are. So we do the same thing for no. So I can ask a question. Am I a rabbit? And the answer is no, because I'm not a rabbit. I can point to my cat that I know is my cat, and I can say, is that a dog? Because it's not a dog. So again, it moves now in a clockwise direction, and it says, you know, that's not a dog. So you practice questions. If that doesn't work, what you need to do is, again, is swing your pendulum backwards and forwards and choose which is your yes and no response. So you might decide that you want clockwise for yes and anti-clockwise for no. Dowsing responses are individual, by the way. A lot of people in dowsing groups will say it's always clockwise for yes and always anti-clockwise for no. That's not true. Our dowsing responses are an individual response to our energy and an individual response to the questions that we ask. We want to establish them and get them set. It doesn't matter whether it's clockwise for yes or anti-clockwise for no. Sometimes you might get a diagonal for yes and a clockwise for no. You might get a cross that goes that way for yes and an anti-clockwise for no, or a clockwise for no, or a diagonal for no. It doesn't matter how the pendulum moves. What matters is that you understand whether it's telling you yes or no. That's what's important. So there are no set dowsing responses. It's just usually many people seem to be clockwise for yes and anti-clockwise for no. I'm actually the opposite that. And sometimes, you know, I'll have a line for yes, because sometimes our responses change. So before each session, it's always useful to change, to know what they are. We won't go into why they change in this video, but sometimes they do. So what I want you to do then, if you can't establish your sort of natural yes and no by asking yes and no questions, is to decide what your yes is. So again, you swing the pendulum backwards and forwards, and then you move it in one direction. So I now start to swing it in a clockwise direction, and I say, this is my yes response. And I keep practicing that. And again, I do it the other way. I keep swinging the pendulum backwards and forwards, and now I'm moving it counterclockwise. And I say, this is my no response. And I just keep doing that for a while. I keep doing that for, you know, a few days, pick it up every time I'm moving. While I'm standing in the kitchen waiting for the potatoes to boil, I will stand there and go, this is my yes response, this is my no response. What you're trying to do is create a bridge of communication between your subconscious mind and your conscious mind. You're developing a neural pathway that your subconscious mind can learn how to use. Everything takes practice. If I wanted to say, right, I'm going to go on a vaulting horse, I'm going to do some kind of flip, I don't go out there, get on a vaulting horse and just do it. I wouldn't be able to do it even with practice, if I'm honest, but I would have to practice. I would have to learn how to run up. I would have to do it in stages while my body learns how to do it and my mind learns how to do it. And it's the same with dowsing. We have to practice. Our subconscious mind has to receive the information as energy from the question, and it has to know what we are expecting so that our conscious mind can grasp hold of this information and do something useful with it, not just go, oh, I can feel the vibe. Okay, I can feel the vibe. Now what? It's meaningless if we don't sort of take action upon it, and we don't know how to utilize that energy and information in our lives for the betterment of our own life and the betterment of the world and the betterment of the masses, so that we can live to our soul's potential, what we came to do. And this is ultimately what dowsing is really, really good for when we get into it. So that's your task, that's your homework, is to establish your yes and your no response. And then I would love you to draw them out or photograph them, and then go and put them in the Facebook group, the Dowsing and Geomancy Masterclass Facebook group. because you'll see a homework thread in there, and I'd love to, for you to share what your yes and your no responses are, because there will be many different ones, many individual ones, and I want you to understand that that's perfectly normal. That's absolutely fine. What the key thing is that you understand what your yes and your no motion is. So that's what we've done today. We've understood how dowsing sort of works, what the mechanism for dowsing is, and to understand your dowsing responses. Now we've done that, and then in the next video, we're really going to move forward, and we're going to take you to the next part. So you've understood your yes and your no dowsing responses. You know what they are. Now you need to know how to ask really good dowsing questions, because this is the next thing I see people fall down on when they learn to dowse, is the quality of their questions. And then that leads them to get answers that don't seem to be right, or they've got a yes and then it obviously turns out that it was a no, and they blame their dowsing. 99.97% of the time, the reason that has occurred is through the quality and the phrasing of their question. So that's what we're going to be looking at tomorrow, is how to ask questions to get consistent, correct answers. And that is the next big skill. So I'll see you in part 2, where we'll be doing exactly that. But in the meantime, I'd love you to post what your dowsing responses are in the Dowsing and Geomancy Facebook group, so I can see what they are, and I can interact with you, and I can talk with you. So I'll see you now in video 2.